Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's block we call Motown Thrillers. All movies, of course, take place somewhere, but the location isn't always so identifiable. It doesn't always loom as large as it does in these movies. Today's block brings Detroit to life and showcases the Motor City as another one of the characters. A disgraced, deep-cover narc is given a chance to come back to the force by investigating the death of a fellow undercover cop. He soon learns that no one wants the mystery solved, not his partner, not the brass, not his wife, not the cop's widow, but will he be able to stop, or is he in too deep? Jason Patric and Ray Liotta star in Joe Carnahan's Narc from 2002. Three home invaders plan one last score to break into the only inhabited house in a dead neighborhood. What seems like a simple smash and grab becomes a whole new nightmare. Jane Levy and Stephen Lang star in Fede Alvarez's Don't Breathe from 2016. Three crooks who are perfect strangers are paid to babysit a family while the patriarch retrieves a secret MacGuffin. When the job goes wrong, the thieves come up with a new plan, but how far can they push it before they get caught or killed? Steven Soderbergh directs Don Cheadle, Benicio del Toro, Ray Liotta, Brendan Fraser, and a killer ensemble cast in 2021's No Sudden Move. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
How's it going? I wish I had something planned. I didn't have anything planned. No.
It's always a treat when you have something planned, but even when you don't.
Always a disappointment. Oh,
no, never a disappointment. It's always more of the anticipation that something might happen, and if it doesn't, maybe next time.
Maybe next time, maybe never.
So today's episode, we're going to be looking at Motown Thrillers, films set against the backdrop of Detroit. We've got some great films here to talk about. Narc from 2002, Don't Breathe from 2016, and No Sudden Move from a couple weeks ago, I think, from 2021. Right. Our newest movie ever on this podcast.
I guess so. It's much closer to the time it was released as when we're doing this show. These are all, movies about sort of the one last score. You know, that's a very typical thing in crime films and thrillers and things like that. But it's funny. I didn't think that was going to be the connective tissue with some of these, but even Narc had that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Jason Patric character a little bit.
Yeah.
You know? He was just going to dip his toe in a little bit. He's going to read some files. He's doing like the Manhunter thing, and he gets sucked in.
I feel like minus the comedy, this could have also been probably categorized under our buddy cop. If there was a laugh or maybe one laugh in this movie, but this is a real intense film.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's much closer to 48 Hours than Lethal Weapon.
Right.
And it's still miles away from 48 Hours.
Yeah, definitely. So you came up with this one. Did this just come up as No Sudden Move was dropping, and we could pair it up with a couple others, or what brought this up?
If I had known a lot more about No Sudden Move, so the thing is, I was like, okay, the movie's out. I want to see it. I don't want to know anything about it. I just want to kind of go in as cold as possible. The only thing I did know is that it was a period piece taking place in Detroit, and if I had known, or if I had seen it beforehand, I probably would have paired this with like Snatch and Way of the Gun.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Both of them are, kind of ensemble crime films, where we're not really following one character in particular necessarily. Maybe in the case of Snatch, we're talking about maybe more so of the Jason Statham character,
sure,
as the lead, And I guess in all three, Benicio del Toro is in all of them. But, I think like those three would be a really fun pairing as like, okay, here's one that's only fun and funny. Here's one that's kind of severe and, sort of philosophical. And here's something kind of in between. You know what I mean?
No Sudden Move was the one in between?
Yeah, I think so. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like, it has a little something to chew on, but it's has an emphasis on sort of like funny moments and then
Right.
thrilling moments, things like that.
Yeah.
But the idea was that, like, okay, No Sudden Move is kind of it's a thriller. It's there for fun, and it would be cool to kind of like have that go through a list of movies in Detroit and that are also along those lines. And as we often find that we're reaching really far back in time, and certain people seem to like have this impression that we only do old movies. Okay, fine, we'll do movies from the 21st century. I mean, Narc is
All three of them.
almost 20 years old, but
Yeah.
like,
That one just
but
made the
still.
cut.
It was still in the 2000s. Okay.
Narc, for being an early 2000 film, still felt like a 90s film to me.
yeah.
Your text,
Yeah,
it was like it felt like a 90s music video.
Right,
Especially how it was
right.
cut. They just started getting motion graphics and all these things started happening in video, and they used them all. You
Yeah.
know, still a fantastic movie.
Exactly. And there's a lot of those like quick cuts away to like flashbacks of when Jason Patrick was a junkie and things like that.
Yeah, which they only like hinted at quite a bit, and they did a really good job of showing that past of his. He's a narcotics agent for anyone that hasn't seen the film, and he clearly has a past of working in some pretty bad situations where he had to get down and be a real undercover cop and do the drugs, which actually fits into the storyline with the cop that we're trying to find out who murdered him, which is a big twist by the end. But he also fell into it pretty hard.
Yeah, and it's so complicated. Yeah, exactly.
It is pretty complicated. I'd say No Sudden Move has more layers than any of these films, with maybe Don't Breathe being the thinnest.
Yeah, of layers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but part of the thing was to like kind of like look at, okay, so they're all going to be kind of thrillers in a way, but then also just like how they approach the city. And in 2 out of the 3 cases, they were filmed, I think, exclusively in Detroit. With Narc, they filmed some of it in Detroit and some of it in like Toronto. But
Okay.
it still managed to sort of capture that really freezing, icy, awful, deathly cold, Canadian winds winter in that the city of Detroit seems to get every winter.
Detroit, yes. Yeah, I mean, it's that Midwest winter, man, that is probably one of the grayest, and I always like compare it to like everything turning to stone for a while, and it's just that cold, like.
Well, because it's so frozen cold, it's like everything's hard. I mean, it's like it is very much like that's a great way to put it. I mean, it's but especially in this movie in Narc, you can really, 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 really feel the cold. Like it's in your bones as you're watching it.
This movie opens with one of the most intense chases I've ever seen. It felt half documentary and half like extremely great cinema, like all in one. They did a great job. And Jason Patrick takes out this guy at the beginning who's putting hot doses in people's necks on the way in this chase. And it's just like the camera guy just catches a glimpse of this guy like choking on his own vomit or something by the time he's dead.
And the gurgling noise is it's so awful. Talk about like a wake up call when you start the movie. It's just like, what is going on? Holy shit! I
didn't blink for the entire time after that scene. Like the whole movie just kind of takes off after that too. Not many dips in this one in terms of intensity. And when they are, they're still pretty hard scenes to watch, but very well done. And Jason Patrick is now in the rotation. I never saw this film when it came out, and he's in Lost Boys. He's in this. And I was trying to think of the other movie he was in with De Niro, and it's about the kids.
Sleepers.
Sleepers, exactly, with Kevin Bacon.
Sleepers. Yeah, Sleepers. Yeah, exactly.
He was in that, right? I mean, like these are those repeatable watches at any time if they're on TV.
He also played Keanu Reeves in Speed 2, Cruise Control.
That's right. But he didn't play Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. No, I know. But
Yeah, he definitely took the place of him, though.
you watch me, I'll watch the boat. But yeah, this movie, okay, it's 2002, but like we have talked about before, like the a decade doesn't end neatly when
Right.
when mathematically it's over, and this definitely still feels like the 90s.
Yeah.
Especially because, watching it again, like, okay, you could definitely see a lot of the influence that perhaps Steven Soderbergh had on Joe Carnahan, the writer-director of this movie. With a lot of that opening scene, sort of how that kind of went down. Like, the way I was kind of, like, describing it to someone the other day was that, like, it feels like if Michael Mann tried to make a Steven Soderbergh movie, it's like,
Yeah.
or maybe vice versa, if Steven Soderbergh was trying to make a Michael Mann movie, because it has a lot of that Michael Mann, sort of brooding character moments, a lot of the sort of disorienting non-linear editing that was happening in this, where we'd be kind of just jumping around in time, like the opening scene you were just talking about, like kind of cut in between some of those moments of real intensity where he's running and chasing the I don't know what he was, the guy with the hot doses or whatever.
Head junkie, yeah.
We keep seeing Jason Patrick sitting on a bench and looking sort of hollowed out and messed up, and it's not sort of revealed until later, like what he was doing there, and and that was later on in this story that we see later on, but like at that moment, like you're kind of like, you don't know what you're cutting to, and it's like you think he's thinking about this moment, maybe he is, and it's like the story actually kind of like maybe starts where he's on that bench and he's trying to put it all together, and we're watching him think about all these moments. So that very much felt like the Limey, where it's like we keep cutting back to Terrence Stamp in the airplane reliving his LA adventures. What was so great about that scene at the bench was like, it gets to that point where it seemed, or at least the department wanted to say, this case is over,
Right.
pin it on this guy who got blown away, and
Nice and clean.
nice and clean. Yeah, they can wipe their hands of it and move on.
He didn't do it. I don't know if you're not listening or you don't want to listen, but he didn't do it.
And yet he had no compunction when faced with possible arrest about trying to kill both of you.
They're like, well, this isn't it. These pieces of the puzzle don't fit. Da 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 da. And he's sitting there like puzzling this whole thing over. Everything's kind of falling apart. It was also after his wife gave him that like sort of ultimatum, like you got to get out of there, which also kind of like had that very much had that Manhunter feel, right? I feel like they had a lot of those scenes in Manhunter as well. But he's sitting there sort of like contemplating this thing, and behind him on the bench is Detroit, and in front of him across the river is Windsor, Canada, right? It's always like funny how close that is to Canada, right?
Right. And two very, very different places.
Yeah, exactly. And just staring across that border, and like, you can also kind of like feel how, perhaps he's, dreaming of greener pastures over there and
Right.
that kind of thing. And like, maybe we'll just pull up stakes and move across the border. Who knows?
I love you. With everything that I am, I'm still gonna leave. Because I can't be with you like this.
Structurally speaking, it's really interesting how the movie is put together. I think it was like John Gilroy who edited this one, and he's like one of the Gilroy brothers, like Tony and Dan Gilroy, right? Are the other two? It's
This
like,
I don't know.
well, like one of them, wrote. One of the Gilroy brothers wrote a lot of the Jason Bourne movies.
Oh, wow.
And Tony Gilroy, he did like Michael Clayton and wrote all the Bourne movies. I think he
Wow,
co-wrote
very
the
successful writer.
New-ish, like the Rogue One thing, the like prequel to Star Wars.
The only good Star Wars film that came out in the last 10 years.
Probably the closest thing to a good one.
Yeah.
I'd have to see it again, I think. But then, his other brother Dan Gilroy, did Nightcrawler. If you remember that with Jake Gyllenhaal.
It's a great movie. He was an editor on that. You mean?
Tony was writing all those movies with Star Wars and Jason Bourne and all this.
And Dan.
Dan was, I think, writing and directing Nightcrawler, and Roman J. Israel Esquire, that kind of thing, and Velvet Buzzsaw. But Dan was the editor on sort of all those movies.
Wow.
Including this one, Narc. So
this guy, quite an artist. I haven't seen that Velvet Buzzsaw, right? I haven't seen that one. That one looked really interesting to me. It did fall in line with the tone that Nightcrawler kind of delivered.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Yeah. It seemed interesting.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of these things were sort of done masterfully, I feel like a lot of them were very much inspired by The Limey and the way that movie was put together, and how just it was a thriller and a revenge movie. It was kind of like Get Carter, but with sort of like an unconventional resolution to everything.
Yeah.
Had some interesting themes and things to chew on. And this movie kind of had a little bit of that in here, where it's like it's part thriller, but also has a lot of character work and things to chew on. I mean,
I thought it was also a mystery. I thought it had elements of that.
Totally. I mean, and then as it's revealed at the end there, by Busta Rhymes, that the reason that the opening was as intense as it was, and Jason Patrick chasing after the hot dose junkie, was because the Calves or whatever gave him up.
They made him.
Yeah. So I kind of forgot about that detail, but it was a really cool way to tie all that together.
Yeah, it tied everything together.
Yeah.
I love this movie because it kind of pulls the rug out from under you quite a bit. Two places in particular. One of them was when they found that fella who had his head blown off in the bathtub. And they go through this entire investigation, who the hell came in here and blew this guy away? And the resolution to that one was the guy did it on accident. He was trying to smoke crack through a fucking shotgun. When Ray Liotta hears that resolution from Jason Patrick and he starts laughing out loud, I started laughing too. But it was more like I was just nervous.
Right, and it's like the relief. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was probably the only bit of relief I got in that movie, really, was when
totally.
when he does the Ray Liotta laugh.
Right.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so Ray Liotta obviously kind of ties Narc and No Sudden Move together in a way.
Yeah.
In a sort of unexpected way. I didn't realize he was in. I didn't realize the cast was as insane as it was for No Sudden Move.
Awesome. Yeah.
Sticking with this one for a second, I was telling you right after you finished Narc the other day, I feel like this is Ray Liotta's best performance. I mean, obviously, Goodfellas is amazing, and he's amazing in it. But I think he tops himself with this one, just performance-wise, especially when we're talking about the last 40 minutes or so of the movie.
Goodfellas is pitting him with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci in one of his best performances, if not the. There's a lot going on. This one was really, he got to shine, and I think even though Jason Patrick and he shared the screen time, very split down the middle between the two of them, it feels like Jason Patrick really let him be Ray Liotta and do his thing, because he was a very subdued character, and I'm sure that worked for Patrick's character, Tellis's character, because he was I don't know, man, he was just damaged. He was just trying to keep it together at all times in this movie, and his family together and everything, but he really did kind of stay off and let Ray Liotta just really steal it in some cases.
And they had, there were obviously big moments of intensity, or lots of sort of screaming and going crazy, and then there's a lot of moments of stillness too. The what really happened in the tunnel story,
you get 3 different versions of it.
Performance there, what was amazing as well, and as well as his sort of last breath moments. I think you're talking about you'd see the breath come out, and
yeah. It was so clear that there was the breath there, and it was very obvious that the camera was right on that, right? They wanted you to see that, and then there was very like methodical breath from coming from Ray Liotta, and then there wasn't one, and they held on it, and I was like, oh shit, that was just great direction. Like everything just worked out there, and it was so powerful.
This movie, Narc, was produced by Tom Cruise and his producing partner, whose name
Wagner.
Yeah, Wagner. And apparently Joe Carnahan was on board to do Mission Impossible 3, but I guess that it didn't work out, creative differences wise and whatever, and maybe he wanted to make Mission Impossible a lot more gritty like Narc or something, but who knows?
Yeah, that could have been awesome.
But this one kind of felt like it was his audition to do some James Ellroy stuff, which he was tied or slated to do White Jazz for a long time, which is James Ellroy's follow-up book to LA Confidential. And it was like, for the longest time, it seemed like Carnahan was developing that. It was like for like 10 years or something, and then it kind of went away. Just one of those things that just couldn't get green light.
Development hell.
Couldn't get the green light.
That stuff makes me so upset when you see these great directors attached to these amazing projects, and you're like, where is it? How could that not get made? But
right, exactly.
Sharknado is on its like 7th iteration.
Well, because Sharknado is a lot more fun, and who wants to
no
do
risk?
Like, so Narc was what, like $6-7 million, and White Jazz would be 10 times that, if not more, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what are you going to do again? And there's going to be what kind of insane unrelenting violence is going to be in this? And wait, the character's not going
to only rated R. Yeah. You're like narrowing the audience down, and people with the money people are just wait
a second. Yeah, exactly. Like, this isn't going to be fun at all. Oh, no, not at all. No. Yeah. It's like, well, maybe we won't do that.
Which, incidentally, I think is why and I'm not trying to jump to the next movie, but why I think Don't Breathe was so successful. They brought it down to a PG-13 level, so their audience was huge for that movie.
Oh, was it PG-13?
And it made a ton of money.
I guess now that I'm thinking about it, there wasn't a whole lot of explicit violence. Yeah.
Fede Alvarez does violence in this one without much blood. When you'd think that there should be a big paint splatter against the wall, there's really nothing that happens other than the fluttering of a lip or something.
The first guy, I guess it was kind of gross, but like
money.
But maybe, you're right. I guess for a movie that was at least marketed and kind of like built around the horror genre, the
guy that just remade Evil Dead and he did it with about 1,000 gallons of blood.
Okay.
He didn't hold back in that one. Oh, okay. That might be one to watch, a remake episode of some remakes that are actually looked at as being decent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that'll be good. I mean, one last closeout on Narc. I mean, a couple of things like I mentioned the Michael Mann thing, but like there's a lot of like it feels like there's a lot of influence from Manhunter, but definitely also Heat. As you're totally aware,
yeah, no. Let me get right on this. Let me see if I agree with you. Yeah.
But one thing that I hope you did notice, and because when I was watching it, it was really startling. I had forgotten about this music cue. So another reason it kind of feels like a Steven Soderbergh movie is because Steven Soderbergh's long time collaborator Cliff Martinez did the music on this one, and there's a lot of cues that definitely had that sound that one associates with movies like Traffic and whatever. However, one of the cues, like sort of right after one of the big fights between Jason Patrick and his wife with the baby, and they're sitting on the couch, the camera's in the other room kind of looking down the hallway. We cut to the outside of a police precinct, and Jason Patrick's kind of rolling up in the cold and walking into this place. Not only does that building look like the precinct in Precinct 13, Assault on Precinct 13, but the score sounds like John Carpenter so much right there. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to have to re-listen to that.
You're hearing it on the soundtrack right now, so you can just nod along and, oh, yeah, you're right, Jeremy.
Yeah, there it is.
You hear how that bass line is very much like... like assault.
Good thing you've got cues to line up to.
No, but it was really surprising because it's like, normally the Cliff Martinez, I feel like the signature sound for him is that kind of like very ethereal, very, moody,
which this also had
noise, and it definitely has that. But the sort of main theme to Narc, which is for me mostly noticeable in this moment, or I should say most notable in this moment, felt like it could have been composed by said John Carpenter.
I'm telling you, I want John Carpenter to score every movie.
Yeah, or have Ennio Morricone do a John Carpenter impression. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, well, speaking of horror movies, I guess we can move on to Don't Breathe.
Interesting. Like, I think you already brought up one of the points I wanted to bring up. Is this a horror movie?
Right.
I think it is. I think in terms of a thriller, it also. But I think a lot of horror and thriller kind of do go hand in hand. They have a lot of similar qualities. But this one, I was questioning whether or not that this was a horror film or kind of like a Home Alone, a home invasion a film.
A much darker Home Alone, right?
Yeah,
Kevin's
exactly.
an adult now, and
Kevin has grown up and
he
moved outside of beautiful Chicagoland to Detroit.
Kevin got a taste for blood when he was 9, so
I was excited to see this because this was one of those that I didn't get to see in the theater so long ago. But it was definitely interesting. It flew by. It felt like a really quick watch, almost like it was one quick sequence. Yeah. And really, I guess most of the movie is in a lot of ways.
It's funny, you're right. It's according to this, it's 88 minutes, but it felt a lot shorter. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it ran quick, and it was from the get-go, very quick. But it was just kind of this group of like people that wouldn't normally get along. Like, this is why sometimes I'm taken out of movies like this. This trio of robbers, of house thieves. One of them is the brainiac, right? That knows exactly what you're not supposed to do. You don't bring a gun to it. You set off the alarm when you leave and all this stuff. You get the keys from your dad who's running the security for this town. And then you've got the one guy who's on the other end of it completely, just a total gangster, if you will, that is ready to just blow somebody away.
Yeah, he had a little of that Johnny Boy Mean Streets energy,
Exactly, yeah, who's always, because like as they were robbing that first place, he started just breaking stuff on the ground for no reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he was just making all this noise, and I'm like, Jesus, like these two would never hang out. They would probably never agree. So that kind of took me out of it from the beginning. But overall, you get like a good swath of characters, And then with Jane Levy's character, who I think she was also in the Evil Dead movie.
Oh, really?
I think she plays Ash, or Ashley in this one. But since she was in that, she's the one we're following in this. She's the one that has the motivation and all that. And I thought that she was actually a decent character. And I think that this movie would have worked with just her. I don't think she needed two other people with her. And I think it would have been...
Well, she needed other people to, like, get killed off before her.
To get killed?
Yeah, exactly. To go through
to be human shields.
to go through the House of Horrors.
But Stephen Lang, man, that guy, that dude put on some muscle for this movie, man.
Speaking of fucking Manhunter, he was the sleazy tabloid reporter in that. Transformed into, like... into the, like, the grizzled general or whatever he was in Avatar. And he's got a little of that. They're like, give me the guy from Avatar. But yeah, it's funny because, like, the very opening, the three kids are robbing this, fancy house somewhere in Detroit suburbs. It very much looks and feels like the Sofia Coppola Bling Ring, and it's funny because it kind of starts off Bling Ring and ends up like People Under the Stairs.
Okay, all right, it does go into People Under the Stairs realm, doesn't it?
Especially when they're like crawling in between like the walls and whatever. I definitely got a little Wes Craven feel in this one.
I mean, what you think is a pretty straightforward thing where this guy is just protecting his home, this Iraq veteran who lost his eyesight at one point, but still can definitely use his other senses quite well, almost like Rutger Hauer in Blind Fury.
Well, a little inconsistently, because at one point he can't
Right,
smell
yeah,
something,
yeah.
and at another point he can smell boots across the room or whatever. But anyway, go ahead.
I guess we can delve into the writing, yeah, for sure. But it is straightforward until all of a sudden you find out that there is another person that is pregnant and chained to the basement with all these mattresses around her, where she's basically waiting for 9 months to give birth to a replacement daughter for this guy who was originally killed by that same woman in a drunk driving accident or something.
Yeah, it's very like a James Bond villain plan there. It's like,
especially with his turkey
little
baster
overtop.
full of sperm that he keeps in the fridge. This movie took like a drastic turn, like into the weird.
Right.
Not a rapist. I never forced myself on her.
Stop.
I promised I would set her free just as soon as she gave me a child. Now she's gone. But I'm done waiting.
If you sort of forgive the plot armor that everyone seems to have at different times, where it's like, oh, all of a sudden he can smell, and 10 seconds before that he couldn't smell when the guy was, you could feel that person's breath on you. They're standing that close in the hallway. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's nose to nose.
Yeah.
Despite some of that stuff, if you're just kind of like, and like, okay, did the knockout gas not work on him or something? It's like,
no, it didn't. Yeah.
Or did he have the antidote? Is it a bad batch? Like, it was just, okay, it just didn't work.
Is it because he doesn't smell? Not that he can't smell, it's that he doesn't inhale, so that the gas never made it inside of him. Aha!
He doesn't have to breathe. You see?
Ding! He doesn't breathe.
It turns out he's a fish. Yeah. It's funny because, like, okay, aside from some of that stuff that was, like, frankly a little distracting, because I'm sitting there, like, wondering, like, well, how did that happen? Are they going to solve that mystery? No, they're just going to gloss it over. But when shit starts hitting the fan, like, I feel like a lot of the escalation of are they going to be able to get out of the house? Are they going to be able to get out of the house? Was done in a sort of a fun way.
Yeah.
I think right around the time that you're talking about, where it's like they're saving the kidnapped woman who's, like, chained up in the it rubs the lotion on its skin room.
Exactly. Yeah. Buffalo Bill's basement.
Yeah.
There.
And they're getting out of the house, and the blind guy just starts shooting at him, and he plugs his kidnapped victim.
Right.
We didn't know she was pregnant until afterwards, or he said she was, and who knows if that's
because he got a
true
little bit
or
upset
not,
killing his hostage. You wouldn't think he'd get that upset about it, especially because we had already found out that woman was the one that killed his daughter, and so you're like, why is he crying over this?
Well, because part of it is what I assumed at that moment, before I knew what the pregnant thing was, like, that he was upset that he wouldn't be able to pull the wings off the fly anymore, and we wouldn't be able to torture her, and keep exacting his revenge.
Okay.
It's like, no,
he was a torturer.
Whether it's like psychological or physical, he's definitely torturing this person.
Oh, he's a torturer. Yeah, no, I didn't mean to say he wasn't, but yeah, I meant physical torturer. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I definitely, I definitely saw the psychological trauma that this woman probably went through.
Right.
I get it.
Oh, you watched the movie? Yeah. I think that bit there between maybe him coming downstairs unexpectedly through what do you call it? Like the infrared scene.
Yeah. When everything changed to that infrared. Yeah.
Basically through that segment, I was, pretty locked in on the movie, and it felt like it was really, coming together pretty well. Then you start getting into some stuff that, like, feels like, people are surviving because of plot armor or whatever. Right. And it just, like, it was surprising, but not, like, thrilling. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, the blind guy, stabs that thing. You're like, oh, well, I guess that guy's dead. And it turns out, nope, it was the other guy who was already dead.
Yeah, exactly. Money took another shot to the chest
Right,
there.
right.
Yeah.
Or like, how the blind guy's like aim just like was like perfect when Alex or whatever his name was opened the door. But like,
I think he got a neck shot on that one.
Yeah. But it was interesting because like you get out of the Rocky, the Jane Levy character gets out of the house. You're like, okay, show's over. She's out of there, and then like it turns
Send the dog.
into Cujo.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the everything from the spit on the door or the window of the door and the passenger side window, like the dog against it, that all was absolute Cujo. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure there were certain shots with the dog where it was also a puppet dog, like the Cujo dog was.
Yeah, they just kind of send him in from camera right.
It was the insult comic dog. What was the name of that?
Triumph. Yeah, Triumph.
Yeah, there's a little Triumph.
For me to poop on.
There's a little for me to poop on action going there. Okay, her escape to California I thought was kind of a fun way to wrap it up, especially because it turns out, he's not gone, and all that, which also feels like a lot like plot armor. It's like, wait, how did he survive?
Yeah. I mean, you got to set up the sequel when you're expecting to make $158 million on a picture that you spent 10 on. But there were some details in that were pretty neat. Is that the news anchor, when delivering that story over that what Jane Levy was watching on the news was, yep, he took out the 2 intruders that were in his house. Right. Never mentions the money or anything like that. So it also gives him a little bit of motivation to exact revenge on Rocky.
And they also didn't find the body of the girl he had kidnapped, because what did he do with the secret of the ooze? He put like tar sands all over her or something, like it was burying her in the foundation of the house.
I think that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
So he had like unrefined oil in the.
It's Detroit, man.
Far out.
By the way, I know that there are some areas of Detroit where it's probably less populous than others. However, this area that they were in, they could get away with literal murder on the streets. And you brought up the Cujo scene at the end. That's a good one because they're outside the entire time and there's a lot of noise. But the very beginning of the movie, you mentioned that the beginning of the movie was we meet the 3 robbers. However, there's a scene before that when we meet Stephen Lang right away dragging a body.
Yeah. It's like the hills have eyes opening to the
I'm
movie.
assuming that's the girl he had locked in the basement.
No,
but
yeah, go ahead.
But it might be Jane Levy, right? Like it's later on in time.
I think it was supposed to be a cold open of that later scene of him dragging Jane Levy by her hair through the streets.
I can't wait to see what this sequel is going to bring, because the sequel comes out literally in August.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, so we actually got this one at a good time too. Incidentally, nice. Again, we just kind of fall into this shit. It's great. But the sequel, I saw the preview of it, and he's training a daughter figure. So I'm assuming that he might have done the thing with Jane Levy, had her daughter, and now he's training her to protect the house.
Failed. The gun is in my hand.
Sorry. I'll make it next time.
It's interesting because the movie's pretty fun, and at certain points, I feel like there were a lot of moments where you're really, or at least I am asking all these questions about like, are they gonna have that be revealed that he has the antidote to the knockout gas or whatever, all these little things where it's like
by the end of the movie you were still stuck on the knockout gas.
Get out of the knockout gas. Yeah, like it's not that he's alive for like what doesn't seem like a realistic scenario. I mean, it's like even when the guy smashed him on the head with the hammer, smashed the hammer so hard that blood flew across the room and hit Rocky in the face, the Jane Levy character in the face.
And he also took a whole turkey baster in the mouth full of sperm.
That was like then jammed like a railroad spike down his neck. It was insane.
Brutal. I was like, for once I felt for him. Right. Like I was like, oh God, dude, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened.
And then they handcuff him, they leave him. But then it's like what did he like chew off his own arm like a beaver in a trap? Like how did he get out of that?
Yeah, they should have set up maybe that he could get out of handcuffs at some point, right?
It's Houdini. It's like
Well, Houdini had to hold his breath when he was held underwater while being chained up. So I think we're onto something here.
he sleeps by holding his breath. There were several moments where we have. Especially during the infrared thing where he's like, reaching through that shelf and just the kind of like, kind of marble sculpture that infrared turns a face into made his eyes really scary in particular. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, okay, obviously a lot of that's the makeup, but also the effect that spectrum of vision has on somebody. It's very sort of flattening.
It flattens
in
it
a way.
all. Yeah.
But you can also see this like texture, but it's not like black and white. It's very odd, and his face in particular was very uncanny at that moment. It was pretty scary as a sort of horror image.
He's a unique looking dude. I wish he would have. He was up to play, or at least he had expressed interest in playing Cable in the Deadpool movie, and I would have loved to see him as Cable. I like Josh Brolin, but I think he would have been a cool Cable. An older. More grizzled veteran.
Yeah, that's true. He kind of has that look. You're right, especially in the like Avatar era, where he's pretty jacked up.
He was my favorite part of Avatar. Avatar is not my favorite movie by far.
No,
I don't think it's a best picture by any means, but I do think he was great in it, and he made the movie super fun. Especially when he basically pulled out his best Ripley impression and got in his own mech, by the end.
Right. Yeah, I forgot
it was
about
just
that.
great.
This low gravity will make you soft.
So overall, did you dig that movie? It was fun, right? You could see the fun in that one. Especially, I think that guy can direct some serious scary stuff, even when he's not. Beholden to a lot of gore, and I still think that it was very fun and thrilling.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of that stuff was the part that I was engaged with. I think like we were talking about earlier. It's like I started to lose interest toward the end when things just seemed to be totally random. The love triangle wasn't working for me either in the beginning, but sort of the sort of second act I think really kind of held my attention, and it was a lot of fun.
Let's move on to the directed by, the shot by, the edited by Steven Soderbergh film, No Sudden Move.
Yeah. Was it also cast by?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, he was going for a little John Carpenter action here, like having his name all over the credits. So I guess he changed it, right? It's like
Peter Andrews is the cinematographer.
Yeah. Or it's like John Carpenter would do the Martin Quartermass and some of that stuff. So
right.
like, it wouldn't seem like he was doing everything.
Right. But it sounds like Soderbergh did a lot of this movie, at least based on the credits. But like you said, this is a very Soderbergh film, I feel. Ensemble cast. The cast was incredibly great in this. And the hits kept on coming, John Hamm popping up in this, I thought was excellent.
Yeah. Bill Duke.
And come on, when Brendan Fraser.
Okay.
I got to say, he is really, really good in this.
He is. Okay, so that was the thing is like, I think he went from, leading man scrawny, George of the Jungle, Mummy. Yes, thank you. And I feel like, at one point he kind of disappeared from public view and then started coming back in the past year or so. This is the first movie I think I've seen him in a long time, at least a decade.
Long time.
But man, he really, really plays this character really well. It's like, this sort of, even though I feel like maybe you don't know a whole lot about him, he's like essentially like a bag man for local mobsters. But you kind of get this sense that, okay, maybe he was, a disgraced police officer who's now doing this thing. And, he's got a little of that attitude. And that character actor role, was really sort of played masterfully by him. You really felt like his, the sort of scruffy, like, Lieutenant Eggcart type character.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. What does he say to him? It's like Eggcart, think of the future.
You ain't got no future, Jack.
Better be sure.
Yeah, so he's definitely got some Eckhart, energy in this one.
Yeah, especially the outfit, right? Because it was that same trench and the same fedora, and he's always in the same exact clothes throughout the entire. Every time he pops up in the movie, it's the same suit.
Right, exactly. Like he sleeps in those clothes, exactly.
he also reminded me of the lawyer from Usual Suspects. Because he kind of gave him the mission, okay. He's the one that recruited them together.
Definitely not as refined or as world-wise and smart or whatever.
Yeah, no.
Definitely a sense of like, what is it called? Like, it's like overconfidence in what's happening. But that may be Pete Postlethwaite had in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, casting-wise, I think we're pretty solid all the way around. The one chink in the armor or slash on the pot for me was Kieran Culkin.
Oh, I was hoping you weren't going to say that.
I just like his thing. It was definitely one of the things that like kind of took me out of that era. I mean,
sure.
He was good in it, and he as a sleazy, almost Steve Buscemi type character worked. It's just I don't know. There's something about him, or maybe it was like his 5 o'clock shadow that just like didn't feel like the era to me, and it kind of like
I agree with that
in that sense.
Yeah, but I do in general. I think he's funny, but he is always playing now Roman.
Yeah,
from
that's true.
Yeah, from Succession.
I
feel like
talk about mergers and acquisitions and shit.
Exactly. I feel like that's coming out in him, but I'm assuming that he was cast probably because of that. And like he's in that role because that's how he could deliver it. But I do agree with you because everyone else, and like you said, Bill Duke, right down to Bill Duke, fit right within the 1950s. And Bill Duke, when he makes his appearance as Aldrich,
Watkins.
When I saw his name pop up in the credits, I'm like, Bill Duke. I got so excited. Like I'm like, hell yeah. But that's just me like loving Predator and everything else that he's done, Commando and all that. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I thought that this was an excellent one that was one of those films that I had no idea how this was going to resolve by the end of the movie or until the end of the movie. And until you find out really what's going on from, again, Matt Damon's cameo that pops up out of nowhere again. It's funny that this movie really is about the catalytic converter being added to automobiles in the 50s.
Or being withheld from them, yes.
Or being withheld from being added to automobiles, right? Because who cares about pollution and all that?
Fuck it. It's very much kind of like a film noir, and it had a lot of this, the sort of feeling you get in film noirs where, as you're sort of working your way up the criminal ladder, it gets sort of closer and closer to more sort of legitimate enterprises, like, or at least what is perceived as legitimate. But those legit businesses are also like even more criminal.
Yeah.
It's just that you don't recognize them as that. And it's very film noir. Yeah.
They end up with more money at the end than they were in for at the beginning.
Right.
They got like 2 extra bags of money out of it.
Right, well, and it's like, in some of those speeches, which are maybe a little didactic from Matt Damon, he does sort of express that, like, look, we run this shit, and, you guys are way out of your depth type of thing. And, you kind of see a lot of those, like, tendrils and those influences, and, like, sort of a much bigger picture, and, like, how, when he's talking about, like, the, how did you get to me or whatever, like, there's so many little steps in between. And as I was saying with the criminal ladder thing, it's like, you're just like the further and further you go up, like you keep seeing how there's sort of no one honest in between there, and everyone is all very crooked all the way up. It's just that, it gets a lot more respectable, right. in public circles or whatever.
Even Ray Liotta's wife turned on Benicio del Toro, like.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the kills in this movie. As you know, I love some of the kills. This movie had some of the best cut and shocking kills that come out of nowhere and are so quick and fast. It's like, boom, they're done. But they're just so brutally violent too. But again, it kind of adds to that I guess quirkiness, dark comedy of the whole thing.
Yeah, because there's a little bit of like almost punchline, like sort of energy to it. It's like, especially when like Ray Liotta gets wasted, he walks up the stairs, like he starts in the middle of yelling,
no,
like, gone. But okay, even Ray Liotta as a sort of a small sort of thankless role in this, like he was like spot on as that character.
Awesome.
And
he was great.
Constantly, like, you as the audience are never on sort of level ground. You're always, things are like shifting sands all the time, and it's like, you don't know what this person's up to, what that person's up to, if like anyone's being honest or whatever. This is definitely one of those things where it's like Steven Soderbergh's in this point in his career where he's and I think he talks about this. He's at this point where he doesn't want to do films anymore. He wants to do movies, and it's like this is definitely more of the movie, and it's there for thrills and chills, and it's just there to be kind of like fun.
What's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what is the difference? But I don't know that I would necessarily make some of those distinctions, but like the way I take that to mean is like that he would give the movies sort of more depth or something more to chew on character wise in a film, and in a movie it's like Ocean's 11 is a movie, right? It's like there's only it's
a ride,
much depth we're gonna get out of this, right? It's like, yeah, this is a ride, this is like, let's have fun, let's have the audience cheer and be surprised and be thrilled and all these other things, and let's not spend too much time getting the audience emotions all riled up, like where they're feeling something for these characters. And it feels like this one is definitely in that movie versus film camp, although like it does try to do a couple things that seem outside of being a thriller, like the relationship with the David Harbour character and the Amy Semitt's character, their relationship, like their son. There was a lot of stuff like kind of like we're spending time with that, but it doesn't really give us much to go off of. It's like, in a different movie, their son and his story could be interesting. In a different movie, their marital troubles getting worked out or not getting worked out could also be interesting, but that wasn't really part of this movie. And so when you get to the scene where it's like it's kind of a punchline about like, oh, it's just Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny and all, but like it felt like that could have if you're gonna have that there, like, okay, well, let's have that be a little more poignant. The version of Steven Soderbergh who was into making films, in his terms, would have threaded that needle a little better to like have more poignancy. If you think of the last line of Sex, Lies, and Videotape, for instance, looks like it's going to rain. It is raining, right? It's like things like that where, characters say these sort of loaded statements, and it gives the audience an insight as to what the characters are going through or thinking or feeling. We're not really getting a whole lot of that here. And even, ostensibly the movie's kind of Don Cheadle's movie, his character in it anyway.
I would say, yeah.
But then again,
definitely starts and ends with him.
It's like, how much do we know about this guy? He's got a farm somewhere. I can't remember, was it in KC or something? And he's wants to go buy it back. And why and where and how and some of these things, it's just like, okay, well, we don't really know. But speaking of Kansas City, how interesting was the sort of Kansas City Confidential connection?
Oh,
with like the masks in the very beginning, they look much like
the old school Halloween masks.
Almost like sort of Batman and Robin. It didn't go all the way down over the mouth the way it did in Kansas City Confidential, but like it looked like it was that same sort of leathery material.
Yeah, exactly.
And
but the first time you see it is pretty shocking because it's like Harbour like comes or his wife or somebody comes around the corner and like gets a gun in his face, but then you see that face, that odd mask. It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, and then also like everyone going in on the job, they weren't supposed to know each other. Also, like
Yeah,
Kansas City
exactly.
Confidential.
The Reservoir Dogs and Kansas City.
Maybe
yeah.
the movie should have been called Motor City Confidential.
Because No Sudden Move.
Yeah.
What is
does it
that?
refer to? I don't know. I was hoping you would have an answer for me. I was going to ask that question.
No,
to you.
I was. Nope, that was one of my notes. Was that I was wondering, if you had any thoughts on where the title came from.
I really don't know.
There's nothing really sudden about this. I mean, the kills are pretty sudden, and there's some things that happen suddenly in this. However, I don't see the reason for the title.
Yeah, it's not as if making quick decisions or sudden moves would somehow change the outcome. And it's like it was like, I don't know. It's like nothing was calculated in the movie, so like people were just going off the seat of their pants. But I don't know. Yeah, the title it seems a mystery. Motor City Confidential. That's my title for it.
And then Live, Die, Repeat.
Yeah.
And
Any Which Way But Loose or Kill or whatever it's called. Yeah, that thing.
Any Which Way But Kill.
What was also surprising, I think, and we didn't really talk about it, was Benicio del Toro's character. It's like, okay, you don't know anything about him, except I guess he was in the auto industry at one point, and now he's kind of a bagman and all these things.
Right. Like an exec, right? Wasn't he kind of high up?
It must have been if he was running in the same circles that the Matt Damon character is running in.
Right.
It's sort of just this like little piece in the background, this little sort of hanging sort of dangling thread that you're just like, okay, maybe there's something there, but it didn't end up going anywhere, at least that I could surmise. But just his performance overall, like he's so still a lot of times, and like you could just really feel that there's a lot going on, bubbling beneath the surface type of thing. And I felt that way about a lot of the actors and a lot of the characters in this one, where it's like feels like there's a lot going on, even though there's not a lot explored.
Just based on their performances?
Just on the performances, exactly, and how they would sort of carry themselves. And I think if No Sudden Move was paired with Way of the Gun and Snatch, as I proposed earlier, I think there'd be a lot to compare with his character in Way of the Gun, in Way of the Gun. But, I find that, like, in Way of the Gun, they have sort of a philosophical approach to things, and like things to chew on, and sort of a lot of the different themes that are running through it. This one, it felt like it was going for a little bit of that, but didn't want to commit to it because, okay, let's stay in movie territory, let's not go into film territory. So you kind of get Snatch, let's have fun type of ensemble film. But it wasn't as fun as like Snatch. You know what I mean? So it didn't go all the way to like, okay, well, I don't have to know too much about Turkish or any of these other characters because it's just there to be fun, right? Like this one felt like it was asking some of that of the audience, and like having to consider like, what it means to have these, oppressive, evil, too big to fail corporations like ruling over all of us. The idea of gentrification and redlining and all these other things that they were bringing up in the movie. Not to mention just like how a lot of these relationships people were in were sort of very cynical, but you didn't quite understand them. And, it's like, was that going somewhere? Was it not? The John Hamm character in particular, I mean, just like the most cynical person. It's like, he's there like, I'm here to quote unquote enforce the law, and like then he's just like he's there to be a bag man.
A bag man that takes no cash from it?
Yeah, he well, he was just there.
He was due some money.
Yeah, he didn't skim anything off the top. He's a very loyal bag man.
Right.
And does his job really well. But that level of cynicism in the movie like wasn't necessarily played for irony the way that sometimes those things were done for irony in Snatch or whatever, where it's like, it didn't end with sort of that punchline button the way that, Snatch did.
Anything to declare?
Yeah, don't go to England.
It's fun. I ended up seeing this one in the theater,
nice.
Which was interesting. Like, I think there's only one theater in LA playing it. According to the writer, anyway, this is the only theater, I guess, in the country playing it.
Limited, huh? Because HBO Max.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's like what, some kind of like awards consideration. They have to play it there, maybe
put it in a theater. Yeah, because I was gonna bring that up as and I wanted to know your opinion. Is I mean, obviously, I think Don Cheadle is going to be nominated for this one. He was outstanding in this, and it didn't feel like Don Cheadle to me. His whole voice, his whole posture, and everything was completely different. I wouldn't be surprised if at Benicio as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I felt like almost all of the actors in this like gave really, really great performances.
It'd be nice to see Brendan Fraser up there, because if he gets recognized for this, because I thought he was really, really excellent.
Yeah, he really was kind of stand out. He had kind of a scene stealing or kind of like a show stealing, presence in the movie. It's interesting.
Most definitely.
I think in terms of just all these movies and how they come together, it was pretty fun to kind of see those sort of aspects of Detroit. I mean, obviously that's well established territory for both, I guess, Don Cheadle and Steven Soderbergh. They were in Detroit in Out of Sight, especially for the 20th century, and like how much Detroit was one of those cities that kind of held sway in people's minds. I feel like there's not a whole lot of movies that really explore that, and like, perhaps something like 8 Mile would have fit a little better, I guess, just in terms of spending more time in the city. But like, part of the idea of this block in particular was to kind of like focus on thrillers, and I think our discussion of between film and movie, No Sudden Move and Don't Breathe are definitely more of the movie side. I feel like Narc, even though most of it's there for thrillers, and especially the way it sort of just cuts to black and ends, it's playing up the thriller part of it, but there's a lot I feel like more going on there and stuff to chew on thematically and everything else, that maybe it kind of edges into the film categorization side of things, but still was very, very thrilling, and it was interesting to kind of like see that world portrayed in this sort of, I don't know what, maybe kind of a third tier city, American city in the like popular culture's minds. It's like, there's sort of New York and LA, it's like up there, and then like after that it's like, you get to like San Francisco and I don't know what, New Orleans and Philly and Chicago,
right?
But then sort of the next tier down, I think, is somewhere like places like Detroit or whatever, where it's like places people have heard of, but maybe if they're not from there or from around there, like they don't know much about. And it is always fun to like have a set of movies that kind of like embody a time and place there, and have the city be kind of a character. And I think in all three of these, at least, that part was accomplished, where you felt like the city was a part of it.
Absolutely. So we talked about Motown thrillers. That's Narc from 2002, Don't Breathe from 2016, and No Sudden Move from 2021. Next week, we're going to be doing a block of atypical vampire films. These are vampire films that don't fall within the, I guess, traditional thoughts of vampires and Dracula and Transylvania, etc. We're going to be talking about Near Dark from 1987, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, 2014. Mouthful. That's a tough one to say. I couldn't even get that one out. And What We Do in the Shadows from 2014. I'm so excited to watch What We Do in the Shadows again, and I'm so happy that this is going to be the first time you've seen it.
Yeah,
it's great.
I haven't seen either of the two movies from the 2000s. I've only seen Near Dark in this set here.
I have not seen Near Dark.
Okay, well there you go.
I've seen enough Near Dark though, like in clips and stuff, that I feel like I've already seen it. Finger licking good, but other than that, I haven't seen it all the way through. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, I did see, but it's going to be good to revisit that one. And What We Do in the Shadows is one of my regular rotation films. I will watch that at any time. Plus the series that spawned off of it, and then there's another spin-off series that also spun off of that one that I'm watching. So it's all great.
That's funny. Yeah, it'll be fun, and I think in terms of like maybe tackling vampire movies, it'll be an interesting way to look at them in a slightly different lens. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I haven't seen 2 out of 3 of them, so
Nice.
yeah.
All right, thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We will be back next week.
Ciao.
Don't get confused thinking that this is about Calvez.
I know it's not.
This is all politics. The only thing you need to know about me is that I'm gonna bag the motherfuckers that killed Mike. If that means breaking every point of procedure, then they're broke. It's because his life was worth a little bit more than a wreath and a rifle salute. Understand? That's just me.